Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by SurvivingBreastCancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of SurvivingBreastCancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Our podcasts are made possible, in part, by corporate sponsor Store My Tumor. In today's episode, I am so pleased to be speaking with Kristie, who joins us from Wisconsin.
I'm in Middleton, Wisconsin, very close to Madison. So if you say Madison, that will probably orient more people. Yes. When I was diagnosed after test after test after test, at diagnosis, I was already stage 4. And I'm in a really great place right now. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of strength. That's when this kind of seed idea for what I call stage 5 started taking root.
Ooh, I like that.
Because I don't want to consider myself as stage 4. And those classifications of the different stages, that's all they are. Just classifications.
Spot on, just classifications. Welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today. You have actually been kind of following the SurvivingBreastCancer.org platform for a little while, and you and I have exchanged a couple of emails and sharing your blog and information on our website with our community members, which I think is so wonderful. And they already have a little bit of taste about you and your background, and I think now that we've kind of full circled into coming onto our podcast, I want our listeners to know that this is the first time you and I are actually speaking. So I think that's really exciting too, where you and I don't have this long history of getting to know each other. So this is really fun to be recording live, so to speak, and on Zoom where we can visually see each other and get to know each other and support each other through our journey. I'm very open about my story, and it's on my website all over the place, and I share a lot about my diagnosis and where I'm at. But this information may also be new to you because this is the first time that we're speaking. So I'm happy to answer questions and relate where I can and share my experience if you have any questions about my breast cancer or where I'm at. And then vice versa. I think it's always amazing when women come and want to give voice to what they've been going through at any stage. Whether, they just went for a biopsy and they don't yet know if it's going to come back malignant or not, or, they're a 20-year plus survivor, and I'm like, okay, rub off on me. I want to be able to say those words someday too. So we really have the full spectrum. But let me stop chatting for a minute and turn things over to you. If you want to give our audience an introduction, name where you're from, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you, Laura. I appreciate this opportunity to be on your podcast, and I'm happy to share my story with other listeners. My name is Kristie Konsoer, and when I am 48 years old now. When I was first diagnosed back in 2012, I was 41. And when I was diagnosed after test after test after test, at diagnosis, I was already stage 4. That was a lot to handle, and I chose to go through with chemotherapy right away. No surgery was really recommended for me at that point. Some people are very, very open about their entire story and what they are doing and where they are currently at. Some people seem to be almost kind of in your face with some of that information. Some people are very angry, it seems, sometimes with what they say, and that's all up to each person. Everyone is different. For me personally, I hold a lot of things a little more closer to my heart. I took time off from teaching in my second grade classroom when I was first diagnosed, because chemotherapy is hard. The side effects are hard. And I just could not be there. So I wound up, it was the spring of 2012. So I took off the rest of that year, and I was just about done with my treatments in the following fall. So I was able to return while still finishing up my chemo. And I taught happily for 4 years after that, still not really sharing with a lot of the public that I had metastatic cancer. I did not want to be treated differently. Professionally, I didn't want others to do things for me. I loved my job, and that's what brought me joy. It did get harder the past few years, or the past final years where I was still in the classroom, where just the medical appointments were becoming more frequent. I needed different things. The aromatase inhibitors weren't doing quite as an effective as job as they needed to be doing. And the recommendation came that I should go back on more traditional forms of chemotherapy. So that led me to a 6-month leave of teaching, which turned into a 1-year leave, which turned into a 2-year leave. And then I kind of just had to finally accept that what was in the best interest of my health was to retire. And that kind of led me into the blogging world, because I still wanted to do something where I could have the joy and the purpose and continue to teach in a different way from what I had been doing.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful. And you bring up so many points so early on in this conversation, Kristie. So thank you for being so open with us about your experience. And I'm also in the education world myself. I work in higher education. And so I think it's very natural for us to kind of take that educational caregiver, persona and pass it forward any way that we can.
Yeah, and I'm in a really great place right now. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of strength. I've worked hard to kind of maintain those things because I need them for the things that I want to do to stay active. And, I passed the 7-year mark a couple months ago, and I find that empowering for myself. And I'm just really happy that I still can be strong and energetic and active. So I'm in a good place.
That's amazing. And yeah, I was just doing the math when you were mentioning your diagnosis in 2012. And that is amazing to hear that you reached the milestone of 7 years. And I have so many questions. If you would love to take me and our listeners back to the time when you got diagnosed, I unfortunately feel that this is not so uncommon, where a lot of people go in for one of their first mammograms after they turn 40 and find out that they have cancer, unfortunately, and then to be diagnosed with such a late stage of cancer. It's so interesting because I feel like women, I never thought about it in the past where I'm like, oh, I'm just going for a doctor's appointment, just getting a mammogram. And it just seems so nonchalant when women just go and have to take off, a half hour, come in late for work or leave work just a little bit early to go get a mammogram. They're in and out. But in those 10 minutes of screenings and imaging, how quickly your life can turn. And
yeah. I had been watched pretty closely. My mother passed away from metastatic breast cancer in 2013, so I'd have to do some math to remember when she was first diagnosed. But I think I had been getting mammograms since the time I was maybe 26 or early 30s.
Oh.
and things had always been turning out okay. I had a couple fibroids here and there, nothing to worry about. I wish I had known some of the things that I know about dense breasts now, because that would have been more of something that I could have advocated for myself for. The type of cancer that I was diagnosed with was the invasive lobular carcinoma, which is also, I guess, more difficult to show up because it's from what I remember at the time, it's not so much as a lump, but these little kind of finger-like branches, which are harder to detect. And if you are someone with dense breasts, like I am, then that just made it all the harder to discover. Um, I definitely wish I would have known a few of these things back then. And I had ultrasounds done when things were somewhat suspicious, and it was always like, no, we don't see anything. In hindsight, it was there and just not found until I was already stage 4.
Yeah, no, and you bring up such a great point about the breast tissue and the density and the symptoms. I think so much of the time, in terms of awareness, we talk about, you know, knowing your body and, feeling for lumps. And that seems to be kind of like the number one trigger. Like, oh, okay, if it's cancer, if it's breast cancer, the number one symptom is that you feel it. You feel a lump. But you're absolutely right that there are so many other signs that are not visible. um, that you can be doing self breast exams all the time and going in for your annual screenings. And it sounds like you've been going consistently and being watched consistently.
Right. I mean, I thought if anything was ever found, it would be found early. So even when I was going in for a lot of tests, I was not that worried because I thought, well, even if they find anything, I'll have surgery, I'll have some treatments, I'll be on top of it after that, and life will eventually kind of go back to the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was diagnosed, some of my symptoms showed, in fact, I did feel a lump, but for some reason, and this could just be me being naive at the time, because I was doing regular exams, to me it was something that was always there. I was like, oh, it's just, around my menstrual cycle, or, oh, it's just, that's always been there. I'm not worried about it. And it wasn't until I actually started noticing the cancer was doing that pulling and bringing in the tissue. And so there started to be like dimpling and actual visible signs on my skin that I said, wait, this is actually starting to look a little strange. That wasn't there before. And that's what prompted me at the age of 34 to go and get a mammogram. There was no family history of it in my family that I knew about. And it did spread to the lymph nodes. So I was caught at an earlier stage, but still to this day nervous about the fact that you can have these dormant cancerous cells in other parts of your body. And
Of course.
Yeah. And
I think so many women are showing up at a younger age having breast cancer. That's very concerning to me too, because what is going on? I think there are a lot of environmental factors and nutritional things, and it's not just a postmenopausal type
Correct.
health
Absolutely.
issue that shows up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one statistic I was seeing was that the hereditary percentage of breast cancer is only 10%. So that leaves the other 90% to obviously be like environmental or something in our diet or something that we're doing that's out of our control.
I bet you had some genetic testing done. I know I did, and there was no component that researchers know of yet that would link this to a genetic something that's been passed along. I find it kind of hard to believe because I think there has to be something there too, especially since my mother had it, but I don't know. I don't have the medical background. I set the bar very high for myself in terms of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to work. And, so many times things would sort of pop up at oncology meetings. And what was my question? Not so much about health things, but I can still teach, right? How
Exactly.
can I keep teaching? Is this going to affect my teaching?
Yes. Yes. Um, and the visibility too. I think that's such an important topic where, to one degree, there's the visible signs of losing your hair and people thinking that, something is wrong or you're going through active treatment. And I'm on the spectrum now where my hair is growing back and I'm getting my energy back, but I still have those doctor's appointments and I still need to take time off from work to schedule those. And a very realistic example that happened to me this past Thursday, I woke up and I was so fatigued that I called in sick. And I rarely call in sick. I take some sick time to do the doctor's appointments, but I don't get the flu. I feel like I'm on all these chemo drugs that it's impossible for me to get sick right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're fighting off the cancer, we're not going to get the flu.
I would get sick every year still teaching.
Oh.
I'd get my flu shot. I would do everything, but there were just too many little germs floating around, and it was like, okay, now I have a cold. Now I have the flu.
Mm. And in the school system too, I totally believe it. But I called my boss and I'm like, I have to take the day off. I need to sleep. I need to rest. My body is telling me, like, I can't even make it to the car, let alone drive. So I'm just going to stay in bed. And I did. I rested all day and then was back at work on Friday. I needed, 15 hours of sleep pretty much. But the point is, like, I look healthy on the outside, but we're still managing so much too. So I think your conversation about appearance can go both ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I really resonate with what you were saying too. Is like, okay, can I work? I want to give it my all. I don't want the special treatment at work. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. But we do need to take care of ourselves and our health too. And it's this really hard fine line and balance. I think we're juggling.
Yeah, and the juggling that was just entering my mind, where I was juggling so much in terms of my career, my health, my home, other aspects of my life, and it's just like, man, I realized I could not do it all anymore.
Yeah.
And that health part is the most important, because without that, then it's really limiting towards those other things that you can do and enjoy.
How did you relate your diagnosis to your second graders?
Oh, that was really hard. At the time, my long-term sub was already in place, and she knew that she would be there for the remaining 3 or 4 weeks of the school year, but she hadn't told the kids. And my principal at the time wanted me to be the one that they hear it from. And I just thought, oh boy, I don't know if I can do that. And it's always amazing of all the things that we do that we don't think we can do. But I decided to go in towards the end of the day, so it would kind of be the last thing that they would have before they went home, and they wouldn't have to carry that with them throughout the whole day. And I went in, and my principal joined me. The boys and girls were very happy to see me, but I told them that I had been seeing a lot of doctors, and they had found a problem with some of my cells, that they were not working the right way. And there was a name for that, and it was called cancer, and I had breast cancer. And then, some of the little whispers started, and they're just like, oh yeah, my grandma had that, or they could connect, they understood. But I wanted to try to tell them in as non-scary of manner as I could. And I said that my doctors had a really good plan for me, but that involved that I wouldn't be able to be there with them in the classroom for a bit. And, they were very lucky to have this teacher who was there sitting in my rocking chair, who was going to be there with them. And so I got through that. Then I had to let the staff know, and I did have a coworker share that with them because I was just kind of done at that point. I had to also send an email to my families about the chat that I had with their students, and to let me know if there were questions, or the long-term sub or the principal or the guidance counselor, that I wanted it to be a smooth as transition as possible for them. Mm-hmm. They really stepped up. I was encouraged to form a team that year for the Komen Walk, and practically all of my kids showed up to walk.
That's empowering. Like, oh my gosh, like that's so special, Kristie. Wow, that's love right there.
So it was a hard thing to tell them, but I think I did okay with that.
Yeah, you kept it positive. You let them know they were in good hands. You were honest and real, right? It's amazing. I always forget that children can pick up on all of these they have this innate intuition about what's going on, right? And for them to be able to connect the dots and say, "Oh, my grandmother had that," or, yes, I can relate to it. They're curious.
And children, they are capable of so much in terms of their understanding. And we think that they're not going to get things, but I often think they get things more than grown-ups do. It's awesome.
I also am very curious too to hear more about your prognosis. I am so inspired to hear that it's been 7 years.
My oncologist never really gave me too many specifics on that. I mean, I knew what the statistics were already because my mother was having a second recurrence, or things had progressed that we didn't know about, and that was where a lot of my knowledge had already come from. So I knew a lot about breast cancer from what was happening with her. And you're right, the statistics are not good. I had been sent to a surgeon in anticipation of possible surgery, and he felt the need to give me a pamphlet or a packet of sorts that was just not overly positive or uplifting. And I started reading it, and I just thought, no, I don't want to know this. This is not going to be me. And as you say, none of us really know. But I didn't even finish reading it. I put it in the garbage bin where it belonged. And that's when this kind of seed idea for what I call stage 5 started taking root.
Ooh, I like
because
this.
I don't want to consider myself as stage 4. And those classifications of the different stages, that's all they are, just classifications, so that you can kind of be compared to other patients, and there are ways to keep treatments consistent for people at different levels. And with stage 5, I decided that I was going to live more on my own terms, and with a mindset of living well and focusing on being healthy, and to try to live with the joy and hope, and to focus on being strong and healthy. And if not the doom and gloom of, oh, you have stage 4, poor you, what have they said, or where else has it gone? No, that's just not where I could be in my mind. And yes, there is a good level of denial in some of that, but the denial has been wonderful for me because I've been able to focus on the positive things. And that's why I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to keep telling myself I'm stage 5, and none of those other statistics are things that I'm really going to pay attention to. I'm going to live without. I do listen to my doctors. That medical part is extremely important. But from the emotional standpoint, it's like I've got this other mindset that I've dug my heels into that.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. I love the fact that you're stage 5. Can I start talking about that when I meet with women? I think that is
sure.
Awesome. I feel like they're on my website. I'm going to say like, and now stage 5, like this is what you have to know. I think that's amazing.
I wrote one of my early blog posts on that.
Really?
To try to get that language out there, because I do think it's an important kind of new way to think about it.
Yes. I will definitely link to that. So when I share the podcast, I will link to that blog post, and I think that's phenomenal. I love it.
I can send you what it's called and such, so you can do that.
Please do. What you were saying, I had to like jump up for a second. I just got this book. I met with the author. Her name's Laura Holmes Haddad. She's out of San Francisco and gave a keynote speech at one of the conferences I was at up in Stowe, Vermont a couple weeks ago. And so she wrote a book, and her keynote was all about the connection between the physical, like medicine, and the oncology and the chemotherapy in the traditional realm of curing cancer, and the disconnect, but yet the importance that we need to bring to the mental and the emotional side of a cancer diagnosis, and that there's a gap there in terms of our treatment. And I think that really resonated with exactly what you just said, and also ties into what we're doing at survivingbreastcancer.org and why I started our nonprofit as well, because as you go through our website, we focus on positivity. Like if you want to find anger in the, the FUs and the exclamations and all of that stuff, like you can find that. It's very easy to complain. Look at all the Yelp reviews on restaurants, right? Like it's very easy to put out the negativity. And it really takes people like you with your blog or our website and our organization to help reframe that mindset on positivity. I truly believe that the body will follow what the mind, attests to. The power of the mind, like we still don't even know the power of what we're capable of doing.
I do too. Yeah. Yes. And if you think you're going to continue to do well, your body physically reacts to what you're emotionally thinking and feeling.
Yes.
And yes, we do have to focus on being positive and hopeful and with more empathy, not just with cancer, but with everything.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I love the stage 5 too, because I think it's true when you give yourself this label. Well, label is probably not the right word, but when you mention your health concerns, and I noticed in my experience with my colleagues and my friends, they always want to know how I'm doing, but they mean it in like a what's the health update, right?
Right. And sometimes you just want to be with your friends and be away from that. I mean, I carry it with me pretty much all the time, everywhere I go. And if I can be in an environment where that's not the focus, where that means a lot to me, where I can just really kind of be myself and not have to answer that question right off the bat or somewhere in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So to quote Laura Holmes in this book, in her keynote, she was saying it's so great that doctors, your oncologist will run all the labs and the blood work and say, okay, great, like your white blood cells are looking good, we can do the infusion, we can move forward, like from a medical perspective, you're doing great. And then your nurse comes in and she does your blood pressure and does your temperature, and she asks you, like, have you fallen recently? Or, like, did you get the smiley faces of, like, what level of fatigue are you feeling today?
Yeah.
But like, no one asks you, like, when was the last time you took a walk? When was the last time you like laughed out loud uncontrollably that made you cry because you were laughing so hard? When was the last time like you were smiling and engaging? And I think that goes back to your that psychological and emotional healing part that's not really embedded yet into or being a complement of care in terms of the traditional treatment that we get.
I was looking for something to do where I would still have a purpose after that retirement decision had finally been made. I had been working on a book for a long time, and I kind of finally brought that to completion, and I was ready to start sending out some queries or looking for an agent or a publisher. And I had received advice from someone who said, Kristie, you don't really have much of a platform. Publishers are going to be a little more likely to pick you up if you have some sort of following or you've made more of a voice for yourself. So I thought, okay, I'll focus more on Twitter on this aspect. I started thinking maybe blogging would be a good way to raise my visibility in that. And I'm actually not so much focused on the book aspect right now. I may come back to that, but I've been finding so much happiness with my blog, and it really is achieving kind of what I wanted to in terms of getting my message out about what it means to live stage 5, what it means to, I blog a lot about hope and joy, some fear, identity, being strong, being healthy, and what those things mean to a person who is trying to live well with cancer. I always do try to put something in there. I think those themes really are applicable to everyone. Everyone should be able, I hope, to walk away with something positive, whether they have cancer or not.
Exactly. Those are great terms to live by regardless, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's been keeping me very busy. I was always a little overconsumed with my teaching career, I feel. And sometimes I think, whoa, I need a little more balance, because I'll be out for a walk and I'll think, oh, I need to tweak this sentence in the blog, or I'll run across someone and have a conversation and think, oh, I need to sit down because I have all these ideas that are coming to mind right away.
Yeah, that's amazing. How can our listeners get in touch with you in terms of like your Twitter account or your blog? How do they find you?
Oh, okay, sure. The blog is called Finding a Way at KristieKonsoer.com. I got that inspiration from the swimmer Diana Nyad, who was the first person to swim from Florida to Cuba.
Wow.
Without a shark tank, where her mantra was, find a way, find a way, find a way. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find a way to be as healthy as I can be while doing it with as much joy and hope as I can. And that's not always easy, because some of the things that I've done and others have done with cancer are really, really hard. But I decided to name it Finding a Way after that. And
she did it on her 5th try, and you're all about stage 5. Oh my God.
Oh, I didn't even realize that, Laura. Thank you.
Kristie,
so that's the name of the blog, and where I can be found at KristieKonsoer.com.
Okay.
The Instagram is KKBadger1, and I think the Twitter is KKBadger1 too. I should know that, but since I never really write to myself, I forget.
I totally understand. Absolutely. And I'm glad that William's joining us too.
Yes, hi, William.
Hi, Chris. I just wanted to say thank you for your positivity. That's what captivated me initially with your blog site, and just keep up the great work. That's wonderful. That's what we try to do in the community.
You too.
So,
you guys are doing. You're making a great difference.
Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
You're part of the podcast, dude. Like, that's cool. Oh, so no, that's great. So people can find you on Twitter and Instagram and your website and read your blogs and help you with your platform, and hopefully your book, if you turn back to that, will help increase awareness and raise that platform also.
Yeah, thank you. I think blogging has actually tightened up my writing a lot, and I'm much more pleased with how I craft things as a writer through the blog. And I'll take some of the material from the book and I'll refashion it, and I'll think, oh, this is so much better. So perhaps at some point I'll be able to compile those posts and organize them in such a way that that's kind of my newest forever draft that I can submit.
Yes. And isn't it healing too? I find a lot of this to be incredibly healing in terms of us just writing, journaling, turning it into some sort of formal, publication on a website. And when I first started too, when I first got diagnosed, everyone was like, oh, you're going to start blogging? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I am way too tired, and you think I'm going to like sit in front of a computer and start typing and worry about spell check? Like, absolutely not. But what I ended up doing was a YouTube channel, and I was able to start recording because I was like, I can talk into my phone. Like, it's not going to be like this beautiful, edited, Final Cut Pro beautiful, YouTube channel. But I literally would do like live YouTubes of like, okay, I'm going in for my treatment right now, this is how I'm feeling, or like, I'm getting my hair cut, this is what's going through, like shaving your head, the experience, etc. And so it was much easier for me to kind of do like the uncensored YouTube, and that's where I started to find some of the traction of, okay, wait, people really want to know, like, it's not happy, I have cancer, everything's great, look at me, I'm positive. It's like, no, you have to balance the positive with the realities and the ups and downs. And from the YouTube channel, again, when I was taking a medical leave, I think we're so used to working on the career and focusing 100% and giving 110% on everything that we do. I was like, okay, great. In between naps, like, what should I be working on? And that's really what gave birth to the nonprofit. So kind of taking this idea of, formalizing my story and then giving people a platform to share theirs, because I was getting so much joy and therapy out of my story that now we have our blog where it's a community blog for people to share their voice, our survivor stories, our podcast for people to come on and share their experiences, because that's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah, you have a great resource on your surviving breast cancer site that you have. It's pulled together with a lot of valuable resources. The writing piece has been very cathartic for me in terms of really focusing what I want to say and how I want to say it. It's a good release.
I wanted to ask you also, you mentioned a little bit about what you blog about in terms of identity, and you and I think, are on different ends of the spectrum in terms of how open we are about our diagnosis and where we need to share with our employers or share with our students or families of our students kind of what's going on. But then also, how do we censor and choose what we're sharing on our social media profiles, on our blogs, in a book? I really struggled with that. I really struggled with, at what point do I let my Facebook friends know, for example, that like I have cancer? Or I think in this digital age too, like that's exactly where my mind goes, is like, okay, social media, like when do these people get to know? And in a positive way, I think it defines me and I embrace it and I like that. So this is my personal, like, yes, I'm Laura Carfang and I have so many, hats that I wear. Cancer is one of those hats, but I talk about it all the time. How do you identify with cancer? What type of language do you like to associate it with, I'm not like, hi, I'm Laura, I have cancer, but at the same time
Right,
too,
right.
it's like, oh, you're Laura, you're
No,
with.
I agree with a lot of what you are saying. It certainly has shaped my life more than I've wanted it to. Uh, you said that some people are like, "Oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened," and no, 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 it's not. Um, but we can still find a renewed direction and a renewed purpose with what it is that has happened to us. I don't think that an illness or a person's job really is where a person's identity is found. And when I could no longer teach, a huge part of my identity was taken by this other thing, the cancer. And it was just like we need to have, so I was very sensitive. I still am sometimes. If you meet someone and the first question is always, "Oh, it's nice to meet you. What do you do?" And it's always based on that career or your job. And it's like, well, I was an elementary school teacher for 22 years. I've retired now, but let me tell you about some of the things that I enjoy. I enjoy reading. I enjoy writing. I love being out in nature. I love to walk and hike. I work on photo cards that I make. I'm a blogger. I have a blog now. And I try to kind of steer that answer into I see what you're asking, but I'll politely say that there's more to a person's identity than what they do. And especially when that's kind of been what you do is something that you've loved and you've identified with as part of your core being for so many years. And it's just kind of like, oh, why did they ask me that? I might start to cry. And then, that's a place where you don't want to go either, where you can't answer this question.
Hi, I just met you. I'm just going to break down right now.
It was asked innocently enough, but it's just kind of like, shoot, that's one of my hot button issues. They should not be asking me that.
Totally.
There's definitely a social anxiety piece that I struggle with in terms of people not always, or I feel people do not always understand that I may not have the energy to do something that I used to be able to do, or I would plan my week out and in terms of when this different side effects like the fatigue would hit or the nausea would hit from some of the things that I had been on recently. And it's just like, okay, I can do something on Monday and on Tuesday, but by Wednesday and Thursday, I'll kind of have these chills and yet I would turn really red from the neck up and I would be super, super hot. And then the rest of me from the neck down would kind of be shaking with the chills. And no, that's not a time that I really want to go out and be with my friends because,
Right.
of course, I'm not going to look healthy. I'm not going to feel healthy either. So I'm not going to have a good time. And I want to be invited. I want to be included and welcomed into a group to do things. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, gosh, is it going to be okay for me to plan this event next week? How am I going to be feeling then? And things have shifted quite a bit, so I don't have as many of those worries, but it's still kind of tough to go out and about if it's just like, well, what can I order in a restaurant that's not going to upset my stomach? And will I be able to enjoy the show afterwards? Or am I going to get a stomach ache from this?
Right.
Or, from some of the medication that I'm on right now. And you're kind of juggling, and you can tell some people, I guess I'm telling a lot more people now.
Oh my gosh, the side effects are absolutely crazy. I'm going to stop us here because we have so much to talk about, and we have yet to get to the topic on empathy, which I know is a very important topic to discuss also with our community members. And I think this is the perfect segue into that topic, talking about the triggers, coming up with different tactics and strategies for dealing with social situations, and all of the things that, as someone who's been diagnosed with cancer or someone living with cancer, these are the things that we think about all the time. Like, can I go out with my friends? How am I going to feel? Am I going to have some sort of reaction to food, etc.? So I think we will pause for now, and then I invite everyone to tune in once a week. Every week we'll be talking again with Kristie as she talks to us a little bit more about empathy and how we engage with our friends, our loved ones, our coworkers, and the world around us. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast are from personal experiences and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you're looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us some stars, show some love, and write a comment. It would mean the absolute world to me and will help get this information out to the broader community so we can continue to provide you with this free, amazing content. Until next time, keep on thriving.